Welcome to Changing the Narrative. I'm your host, Sammika Cosey. I want to thank you all for tuning in and joining us today. Today we have an amazing episode. June is Men's Mental Health Awareness. So we have with us today Coach Scott. Coach Scott is the founder of Serenity Pathways Meditation, and he is going to give us a closer look at men's mental health. Thank you so much for joining us, Coach Scott.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Can you, before we get into the questions, can you let our listeners know who you are? A little about yourself?
Sure. Well, my name is Coach Tearched Scott. I am the founder of Serenity Pathways Meditation. We focus in on motivational speaking as well as meditation. We basically make sure that you find the best version of yourselves. Now, we primarily cater to our minorities, usually men. We want to make sure that they get the help that they need because a lot of times they go through mental health issues and they have a lot of stress that they aren't able to deal with. So for us, we want to make sure that they get the help they deserve by doing meditation as well as doing coaching that they can have. That way it guides them through life.
So now, with June being Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, what are some of the misconceptions, so some of the common misconceptions that are often associated with men's mental health?
They assume a lot of times that men don't have mental health issues going on. A lot of times people have been told that men just internalize it, which is what we actually do, and we don't actually deal with what's going on. So sometimes men kind of shut down and don't express themselves well, and the people that are around them find that they aren't very receptive to them in certain aspects. And men do have those moments. It's not something to laugh at or something to scoff at. It's something to appreciate. Sometimes it's being a listening ear when they need you to be a listening ear, and realizing that we all go through things, men included, and we can't always just be told to just man up and deal with it.
Okay, so I want to go to that last point. You mentioned to man up. And so I know there are a lot of boys and a lot of men growing up who were told that men don't cry, to man up when dealing with things that were often related to emotions. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's generally something I was told growing up as well, that men don't cry, men don't show emotion, men suck it up and just deal with it. And unfortunately, that will come out at some point in life. A lot of times for me, I had a lot of anger pent up from dealing with a lot of things that I hadn't dealt with as a child, with trauma. And because of those things, I wasn't able to express myself well as I got to be an adult. So until you start really getting people who are going to care about what's happening to you, either being a therapist or somebody who thinks that they can help you, maybe you actually talking to some type of spiritual leader, that definitely helps as well, because you definitely need to find a way to get that anger out and have it turn into something positive and helpful.
So now, when you were told that as a child, what were your thoughts? And then I want you to also think about your thoughts in adulthood now, and how has that changed?
I think my thoughts as a child when it comes to matter was that this doesn't feel right. This is not something I want to do. But if I'm told that this is the way I need to be, then this is the way I need to be, because I want to grow up to be a man just like every other guy who's had his father in his life, who believes that, the best way to get better is to toughen up, grow thicker skin, and to learn how to manage life, because life never gets any easier. It gets a lot harder as you get to be an adult. Mm-hmm. And I've learned that that's very true as an adult life, because a lot of times whenever you're working in an adult field, let's just say to be in an adult world, a lot of employers don't care how you're feeling at the time. They don't care if you're having a mental health disorder at the time. They want you to handle the situation on the job, or they'll find someone else who can do it better.
And so let's think about that right now. How do you think that when you're mentioning that there's a lot of employers who don't really care about what you're going through outside of work, how do you think that makes not just men but people feel in general?
It definitely makes people feel bad, because again, it's not a place that they can feel comfortable, that they can, vent and figure out how they're going to handle the situation. And if you don't have a place to vent, you're just going to be, more reserved, keep it to yourself. You're going to find that you're going to have more outbursts that might pop out of nowhere, and you got to learn how to deal with those, or else they'll deal with you.
Okay. And so a lot of men don't really go and let people know that they have mental health challenges, or they don't go out to seek help. Why do you think that men are less likely to go out and seek help?
I think it's because of the stereotype that men always have to man up and just deal with everything that comes along with being a man. And a lot of times, when you have friends, especially guy friends, at least I find in the African American community, we like to laugh at guys or people who are going through issues. We like to make jokes about it. And I think it's a kind of a coping mechanism to what's going on in life, where we're not able to deal with what's going on, or we've never dealt with it before because we've been dealing with PTSD for a long time. And it's easiest to laugh at as opposed to go getting help and dealing with it, or sometimes having that right support system that's in place for you.
And so, has this ever occurred or happened to you where you've been dealing with different mental health challenges and you've went to others to talk to them about it and they laughed at it or didn't really take it serious?
Yeah, I've had people laugh at it and not take it serious before, and it really kind of shows you who's your real friends and who's really looking out for you, because a real friend understands that you're going to have these moments where these things are going to happen, and you're going to have somebody to rely on who's going to be willing to speak to you or just be a listening ear. Sometimes it's not even about being words being said. It's more about somebody listening in and understanding that you're going through something. You don't have to say anything, just be there for that person.
During those moments, how did you feel?
Usually I felt, just, blocked off, just upset, angry, and, just kind of wanted to get out of the situation. And a lot of times I would leave the situation, just not talk about it anymore, or, just try to find other ways to try to vent, to get that frustration out and deal with it.
So you mentioned that you often didn't talk about it anymore after those situations. Why do you think you went to, instead of telling someone else or going to seek additional support and help, to not just talking about it anymore?
I think it was just that was the best way I felt that I could cope. Just coping was just internalizing it, not dealing with it, and just, sweeping it to the side, not realizing that you're only going to take so much pressure before you're going to explode or you're going to pop at some point. So just got to make sure that you get that help that you need, whether it be a therapist or your clergy or somebody who's willing to be that listening ear, who's not going to, give away what's going on with you to anybody else.
Now, going back to when you were a child, when you were a younger kid, to now, have you seen a difference in how we respond to mental health when it comes to men?
I think we have seen a different shift in it. However, we still see some residual people who just telling guys just to man up and just to deal with it. Unfortunately, I do see a lot of things, unfortunately, with social media, with women making fun of guys who are dealing with mental health issues, and it's not funny. It's not funny at all, because you can kind of tell when guys are going through something hard, and from one guy to another, you can just understand that it's not easy to deal with, and it's something that needs to be addressed and needs to be talked about and needs to be healed.
Can you give us some of the mental health challenges that men often face in our society today?
A lot of times, usually it's self-doubt about themselves, about what they're capable of doing, living up to the standard that the world has placed on them. A lot of times guys feel that they have to be the tip of the top. They always have to take care of everything. They have to be the breadwinners. They have to make sure that everything is gone a certain way, or else they're not looked at as men. And a lot of times it breaks a lot of guys down, where they're not doing well because of the fact that they don't think that they're able to do the things that they need to be doing, and often leads to guys sometimes causing self-harm, which is not something we want guys to do.
Okay. What are some ways that you feel that you yourself or other men are able to cope when they are facing some of those mental health challenges?
I think some of the best ways is either one, meditation, listen to some motivational speakers. Also, speaking to therapists is a great way to deal with it. I find that some of the best ways is guys who might do sports or play video games or certain other things. That helps guys kind of alleviate that stress, because they've realized that it's not as bad as they think it is, and it gives them an opening to say, okay, this is happening, I'm going to handle this, I'm going to deal with this, but it's in a positive way that's not going to make them feel that they are going to be put down, or that it's going to come back to bite them.
Now, there's a lot of people watching this and listening in. How can we as not women, but also society, help create a better safe space for men when they are dealing with mental health challenges, whether it is within a home, within a community, or online?
I would definitely say be a listening ear and not a running mouth, because a lot of times what you'll find is that people who say that they're listening and they want to help, they'll run back and tell somebody else, or they'll just make jokes about it, or they'll use it against you later on down the line. I think the worst thing that society does is take what people have told them and use it against them later on down the line, and then that causes people to close up, and then they don't want to talk about it anymore. They just get to a point where, okay, this person doesn't care, or they're going to just use it against me, so why am I going to say anything about it, because it's not going to get, taken care of or resolved. I'm just going to constantly have to deal with this.
And so you mentioned something about being a running mouth. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Well, a lot of times people will say that they want to help you, but actually they're just looking for an opportunity to kind of gossip and talk about you behind your back, or they want to be the center of attention. They like to be in the middle of what we call drama. And people who like to be in the middle of drama will constantly do these things and make themselves feel better by, spreading more information out there than they should, whether it be lies or truth. They just like to be the center of attention, and it makes them feel good about themselves.
Okay. And then in regards to creating a safe space and then looking at individuals who take what other people say when they are dealing with mental health challenges and they go and gossip about it, how do you think that that plays a role in to men or anyone else going to find a safe space in other people?
It definitely makes it a lot harder to find a safer space in those people, because you realize this person cannot be trusted with what you're telling them. And if you can't be trusted with what I'm telling you, then I can't have you in my circle, and that's going to cause them to either leave that person alone or say, you know what, I can't be around you at all. And a lot of times that's what people will cut people off, as we say often, and say, I can't be with you or around you or anybody else who's around you, because you're just going to go back, run and tell someone else what I just said, and that's not going to help me.
Do you feel that that also affects them going to seek someone else to become a safe space because they sought someone for that safe space who went and told everyone what they were dealing with? Do you think that affects them for going to seek further assistance?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes that pushes people to go to other people who are outside that circle, because you only have so many people sometimes in your circle that you can actually speak to about certain things. And then if you feel like that circle is not working well, then you start going outside that circle. Now, outside the circle may be good, may be bad. I'm not sure. It's depending on the situation. But always being very weary of people you have in your circle versus people who are outside your circle who are looking in.
Now, so I know one of the things we want to spend more time focusing on is making sure we're getting a word out about the challenges that men face. Can you tell us the difference with discussing men's mental health versus someone gossiping about it?
So discussing mental health would be somebody sitting down with you in a room in private and just letting you talk about things that are affecting you right now, whether it be positive, negative, or just something in between. Because a lot of times people don't realize is that there's always a line that people have between good, bad, and ugly, and some people they have a good thing, but then there's also some bad things that go along with that, or there might be some type of middle ground, and you need to have that person that's going to be that safe space to say, yeah, let's talk about this in private. I'll keep this to myself. I don't want anybody else to find out about this, because I love you enough to say, this is our personal space. This is where we can talk. This is not going to get out to anybody else. And that if you need to vent or you're frustrated about things, I want you to speak about it openly, honestly. That way we can resolve these issues. Versus somebody who's just going to, say, okay, well, let's sit down and talk about this. And then behind your back, they have their phone playing, or they're on live or something like that. And they're just, using it for content because they feel like, oh, well, I can make a name for myself, because far too many people feel like currently that they can easily make a name for themselves or get their 10 seconds of fame by embarrassing somebody else, and not realizing that does not help anyone at all.
Why do you think a lot of people do that?
I think a lot of people do that because they're frustrated with themselves, or they're seeking out attention that they haven't gotten before. A lot of times when people have not gotten that attention, they feel that the best way for me to get attention is to embarrass somebody else or make somebody else feel bad about themselves, or expose somebody else to doing some stuff, and that doesn't really help you. That doesn't make you look any better, because it's only going to be so long before it goes away and you're going to be back to square one.
Where would you like to see us go with discussing men's mental health?
I definitely think that a place that we should go is giving people the opportunity to go to these safe places for free. A lot of times, when it comes to therapy and dealing with mental health issues, they charge a lot of people for these services. Mm-hmm. Some people cannot afford these services, and these services should be free. Honestly, I've said many a times that I think that every person should go to one session of therapy a week, and it should be free to everyone, and everybody has to go. It's a mandatory thing, because there's a lot of things people are dealing with right now that they need help with, that they aren't talking about, and we would be so much far ahead as a society if we actually sought out therapy.
Okay. Why is therapy important for you? And for someone who's listening, because there's a negative stigma in place, especially inside of our communities, when it comes to going to therapy, when it comes to seeking therapeutic help. Why is it important to you? And then I want you to also think about your childhood. Was it important back then also?
I think it's very important to go to therapy right now, because of more than not, you're dealing with things that you have not really processed at the time, because everyday things happen to us that we are not prepared for and that we're not ready always to see. And these things happen, and it's just like a wave that hits you that you're not sure which way to go. And when you go see a therapist, it definitely helps you figure out what you're dealing with and how to handle a situation. I remember, again, as a kid, not having these avenues, because I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and these weren't things that were talked about. It wasn't really discussed. It wasn't really, a prominent figure as like it is now. But now it's more prominent to the point where, people are actually going out and seeking out help. I remember when I was in school and college, I actually had a black male therapist who actually came to me and told me, yeah, you can talk to me about these things. And I felt so much better when I started talking to him about it. I wish I still talk to him to this day, but, just having that male presence available to me definitely helps. Now, I do have a group that I am now that I do work with as well. It's a mental health group, but that one-on-one I think would be great, especially when it comes to having somebody who's trained in therapy.
So I know you mentioned that you've had one-to-one and you've also done group therapy. Can you tell us how both of those have made you feel and how they are different from each other?
I think the one-on-one has been a lot better than the group one, because I think for me, I still hold back a lot, because I don't want to say as much in a group as opposed to just saying to one-on-one to a person I kind of know, who I know is not going to say anything, because the group is good, but if you're not really speaking to people like that as often as that, you kind of like, you still have that stigma, like, I don't know if they're going to say something to somebody. But with this one-on-one, if I know you're a certified, therapist, you sign a disclosure saying that you're not going to say anything about it. And if they do, then that's a whole lawsuit. So I know that puts the emphasis on you to know that you don't want to say things because of the fact that you can't, or else you'll get in trouble. And for me, that gives me that, that sense of safety, knowing that you can't say that information.
Where do you think that you would be if you didn't have that one-to-one therapy, or if you didn't have that group therapy? How do you think that you'll be able to cope and manage your emotions right now?
I don't think I would be managing them super well right now. I think I've been probably walking around a lot angrier than I am now. Like I said, I still have anger within me, which is, culpable to anybody. Everybody has anger within them. But I don't think I would be dealing with it as well as I do now, because I feel like if I did not have somebody to talk to about, the outlet to have, I might go off on somebody just for a random reason, and it might end up really bad for me, and I might end up in jail and going to prison for a long time.
Okay. And so I know that you're mentioning that you've been able to have that outlet. What if there is someone listening right now who they don't have that outlet? How do you think, or what steps do you think they can do to work toward getting someone or finding someone or that outlet, whether it is finding a group therapist or someone who can work with them one-to-one?
I would say definitely start doing your research online about therapists who are available to you in your area. I also suggest, and people may be against this at times, but ChatGPT is a great website to use to actually find facilities that may be around you that offer free services that you can use. And then when you find those free services, you can actually speak to several actual therapists. You don't have to stick with one. You can always switch around. People assume that once you get one therapist, you have no. You can switch around as many times as you want to find that person who's willing to listen and give you that advice that you need. And that goes a long way to making sure that you're taking care of yourself and yet you're not, going crazy or going off on people around you.
Now, a lot of people may have had therapy one time, two times, and it didn't go well, or they didn't have that connection with their therapist. One of the things that you mentioned was to maybe go out and seek another therapist. Why do you think it's important for people to continue to go and try to seek those services?
Because you're not going to get better if you don't address the wound. It's like you putting a bandage over a gunshot wound. You can't do that. It's not going to heal. It's only going to just protect the problem for a little while, but the underlying problem is still there. So you have to be willing to take the chance to go out there and give it another shot, give it another go. I know it may be hard sometimes to keep trying to move around because some people don't like change, but if you're willing to give that change a chance, you definitely feel better about yourself. You'll definitely go about life feeling a lot more happier, a lot more involved, a little more stress-free, and more, happy about things that are going to be coming your way in the future.
Okay. Now, I know there are a lot of younger boys who deal with traumatic experience, who have different traumas that they have faced, who will grow to become men, possibly if unhealed, will still have those same traumatic experiences and still try to work through on their own that trauma. What do you think family and friends can do to work towards supporting men and young males on their journey to healing?
I would say definitely seek out other males that they feel are good role models for those young men. Like, my organization, Serenity Pathways Meditation, we focus in on mentoring, coaching young males because we understand that they go through things. And I think the best people who understand men are other men, especially men who are dealing with their traumas and willing to get the help that they deserve. Because if they see that the men that they look up to are getting help, they'll be more willing to get the help themselves because, again, people who don't seek out help just are going to cause more trauma to themselves and people around them.
Why do you think it's also important for other men who are dealing with mental health to talk about it? Not just to talk about it to that person that they meet with one-to-one, but also to go within those group settings or to talk to the youth or to talk to other men who are possibly dealing with it also.
I think it's fear. A lot of times people don't realize that a lot of men deal with a lot of fear when it comes to stuff. Again, society has always told men that they've always been the breadwinner, the alpha, that they can't show emotion to things. But letting people know that you're getting therapy is not a bad thing. It's a really great thing. It shows growth. It shows that you're meaning to make changes and that you're not going to stay in the same pot that you were put in originally. Because a lot of people, once they get put into a certain pot, they don't want to try to jump out or change anything. They kind of get into the pot. They may overgrow it. It may start to rot away, and they're not really dealing with all the things that pot has to offer. And sometimes getting out of one pot and getting to another one can definitely make you grow better, learn your strengths, your weaknesses, and become a better person.
So why do you think it's important for them? This would be the last question. Why is it important for them to share that they're also dealing and having this experience?
I think it's a really a good reason to share because of the fact that it shows that you aren't the only one going through this. And a lot of people don't understand that you aren't the only one going through this, but me sharing it lets you know that you can have the help that you need and that you don't have to live through this alone.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for not just being a voice for yourself, but also being a voice for other men and young boys who may be experiencing this too. So thank you, Coach Scott of Serenity Pathways, who does have a coaching program to help men to work toward dealing with their mental health. So I do want to thank all of you for tuning in and for joining us. And if you are listening, whether you are male or female, we want to encourage you all to, if there are mental challenges that you are facing, to go out there, to get therapy, to get the help that you need. If you know someone who is dealing with something, support them. Be their safe space. Be a shoulder for them, be an ear for them, and let's all work together to make a difference, because nothing changes if nothing changes. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.